Today is February 7th, 2021. A new year is well underway. You likely have made plans for this year. If we were to ask non-Christians their plans for the year 2021, we would expect that their plans would be different from those of Christians. I say that because the Bible says, set your mind on things above and not on things on the earth. Colossians 3 verse 2, the American Standard Translation. Set your mind on things above. Since the minds of Christians are to be on things above, then we would expect our plans, our goals, to be different from those who are non-Christians. But sometimes God is just as absent from our plans as He is from the plans of those who are not Christians. And that is the problem addressed in James chapter 4, verses 13 through 17. I direct your attention to James 4. I'd like for us to read verses 13 through 17, which will serve as our text. The Bible says, "Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year, and buy and sell and get gain, whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away. For that ye ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. But now ye rejoice in your boastings. All such rejoicing is evil. Therefore to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin." This morning I'm speaking on the theme, our plans and God's will. Our plans and God's will. There should be a connection between my plans and God's will. That point is made clear in this text. I want to share with you some thoughts from this passage that I believe will help us connect our plans with God's will and to see good reasons why we should connect our plans with the will of God. Our plans and God's will. In this text, we see, in the first place, the folly of making plans without considering God's will. The folly, the foolishness of making plans without considering God's will. Isn't that what is under consideration? Verse 13, "Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain." The ones under consideration, they knew where they would go. We're going into this city. They knew how long they would stay. We'll continue there a year. They knew what they would do. They said, we will buy and sell and get gain. So they had plans. And the problem was not in the making of their plans. The problem was they were making plans and not considering God's will. I know that the Lord would have us to make plans. "For which of you intending to build a tower sitteth not down first and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it? Lest haply when he hath laid the foundation, others begin to mock him and say, this man began to build and is not able to finish." Luke 14, 28 through 30. Jesus taught the need for making plans. If you're going to build a tower, you need to know the cost of it. You need to make some preparation. You need to have some plans for building a tower. In Proverbs chapter 24 and verse 27, notice the reading, "Prepare thy work without, and make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterwards build thine house." So before you build a house, there are some things you need to do. If you're a farmer, you need to go out and sow the seed. You need to cultivate the crop, reap a harvest, and then build your house. In other words, make plans. Throughout the Bible, we find the teaching is the same. The Apostle Paul was one who made plans. In Acts chapter 19, verse 21, the Bible says, Paul purposed in the Spirit when he had passed through Macedonia and Achaia to go to Jerusalem, saying, after I have been there, I must also see Rome. Paul wanted to go to Rome to preach the gospel there, and he had plans. And you and I need plans, but in the making of our plans, we must consider God's will. What is God's will for the plans I make? Unfortunately, some make plans with no consideration of God. I read in Luke chapter 12 about a man who had plans. This rich farmer had such a bountiful crop, he didn't have the room to store all of his fruits and goods, and so he devised a plan, didn't he? I will tear down my old barns and I will build greater barns. Well, that was a good plan, I suppose. Luke 12, verses 17 and 18, if he had included God in his plans. But that was the problem with the rich farmer. He had all of these plans, and yet he had not considered God's will. As we think about making plans and how our plans should coincide with God's will, I want to ask this question. Think about it seriously. What are you living for? What are you living for? Just think about that for a moment. It may be that someone says, well, I am living for, and then makes reference to the future. I'm living for something that is soon going to happen. Sometimes we live in the future or live for the future. And we think to ourselves, if I can only graduate from high school, I'll have it made then. Or if I can only graduate from college, then I'll have that chapter of life behind me and I can get on with business then. Or after I get married, then things will really change in my life. Or when we finally build a house and settle down somewhere, things are really going to fall in place then in my life. One of these days, if I can retire, I'm going to. And we're always looking toward the future, always making plans. Well, it's a good thing to plan for the future, but the problem with living in the future is we may be disappointed when the future comes. Here we've invested all of this energy and effort making plans for the future, and then the future